Schools, supermarkets have everything. Nothing is lacking. When it was expensive, they offered me $45,000, over 300,000 RMB, but I didn't sell. Last year, I sold it for 4,500, 30,000 RMB. Most of them were built by developers and there were few resettlement houses. In less than 10 years, with fewer people and more buildings, it became cheap. The top floor is $1,500 a unit, the fifth floor is $2,200 or $3,000 a unit. The first floor is $7,400. It has schools, supermarkets, and everything. Nothing is lacking. For the past 30 years, made-in-China products have flooded the world due to their ultra-cheapness. But why are houses in China so expensive? And today, in this country, whether in first-tier cities or 18th-tier cities, housing prices are falling sharply. Why are affordable houses 30 years late? In this video, we'll reveal the answer. Few people can accurately predict the real estate market trend, but Jack Ma is one of them. Back in 2017, at the Hangzhou Global Summit, Ma said, "In the next 8 years, the cheapest thing in China might be houses." At that time, housing prices across China were still skyrocketing, and many thought Ma's statement was merely attention-grabbing. Then, starting in 2022, housing prices across China reached a turning point. According to embellished official Chinese data, housing prices have cumulatively fallen by 30 to 40% over the past 4 years, equivalent to 162 trillion yuan in assets disappearing into thin air. For a family of 4, this translates to a loss of approximately $100,000 per family. In underdeveloped cities like Hegong, Tailin, and Fushun, housing prices have plummeted to dirt-cheap levels, with apartments available for around $5,000. Harbin is the capital city of Heilongjiang province in northeast China. Even in this provincial capital, housing prices have fallen to astonishing levels. Seeking advice on what to do with my old house in my hometown in northeast China, my father left me an apartment in Harbin that has been vacant for over 20 years. A few days ago, I went back to my hometown and went upstairs with my mother to clean. My mother is 70 years old and she needs to rest twice to climb the 8 flights of stairs. She can't even manage one. When she buys groceries or carries other things, it becomes even more difficult for her, keeping it just as a memento. However, leaving the house vacant isn't ideal. I plan to go back there when I retire, but my mother is getting older and the 8th floor doesn't have an elevator, which is definitely inconvenient. The lady said that although her apartment is only 32 square meters, it's located in downtown Harbin, right next to a top-tier high school, and the surrounding amenities are very convenient. When housing prices were high, this house could sell for 45,000, over 300,000 yuan. Recently, she inquired with a real estate agent and was surprised to find the asking price was only $7,000, or 50,000 yuan. She feels unbelievable about this price and said, "How come the price of houses in Harbin have fallen to such a level?" The decline in Chinese housing prices is inevitable, just as the CCP has consistently concealed the true statistics. This trickery cannot fool data super players like Jack Ma. In 2019, he said, "In the future, every young couple will have to support 8 elderly people and manage 5 houses." His words already implied a housing surplus, rising holding costs, and the impossibility of guaranteed property appreciation. Currently, the housing surplus in China is already very serious. Chinese media reports that in May 2026, the number of second-hand homes listed for sale exceeded 8.5 million, setting a new historical record. Cities like Chengdu, Wuhan, and Chongqing have more than 200,000 second-hand homes listed. We must reiterate that under the CCP's demand to promote a rosy economic outlook, all officially released data is highly likely to be embellished to the maximum extent. In 2024, Chinese social media platforms began a heated discussion about buying a condo outright for around $5,000. Netizens identified 24 cities across China with such low housing prices, including Fushun in Liaoning Province, Huainan in Anhui Province, Guizhou in Yunnan Province, and Hebei in Henan Province. These cities, popular online for their low prices, were primarily those that had prospered due to resource extraction. They often had well-developed public facilities, but resource depletion led to population loss and rapid property depreciation. For example, Fushun in Liaoning Province was once a famous coal and power city, and Guizhou in Yunnan Province was one of China's early tin mining areas. Many young Chinese chose to relocate to these cities, lying flat in these incredibly cheap homes. People always say my house is too shabby. Today, we're taking you to see a high-end residence about $4,500 or 30,000 RMB in cash. Last night, this fan told me his property certificate had been issued, and today we'll go help him with the transfer of utilities. We're here. This is the old building in front of us, but it's connected to a newer community. A standard school district property, you see? There's a school downstairs. Today, we're challenging ourselves with the cheapest house in Daqing, $3,000 for a usable apartment of over 60 square meters. 2 bedrooms, 2 south-facing bedrooms. This is the south-facing bedroom, which has a large balcony. Let's look over here. This room takes up about 7 square meters, right? Then this, the south-facing bedroom. This south-facing bedroom has an advantage. See here? There's an area, what we call a ditch. See, even with a 1.8 meter bed here, there's still plenty of space. This is a small, dark living room. You can open up this space, you can open up this side. However, many more families are struggling due to the sharp drop in housing prices. This is because, alongside the falling housing prices, the Chinese economy is rapidly weakening, leading to mass unemployment and many middle-class families falling into poverty. Emptying $500,000 or 3.4 million yuan in savings, I bought my dream home, but only after moving in did I realize the pitfalls I'd fallen into that I could never escape. In 2022, I emptied my family's savings and took on a $270,000 loan with a monthly payment of $1,150. I specifically chose the 5th floor because of its bright and airy feel. My requirements weren't high, I just wanted a place entirely my own, free from renting and having to live a nomadic life, moving every year. But after moving in, all I felt was regret. Living on a street-facing property was a never-ending nightmare. The constant roar of traffic, even with double windows tightly shut, can't stop the low-frequency noise from seeping into the room. Dust is almost impossible to keep out. The blogger said relatives and friends advised her to sell and cut the losses, but she couldn't bring herself to do it. As an ordinary working-class family, no one could offer financial support, so she dared not make a decision easily. She said, for ordinary people with no one to rely on, a home is never just a place to sleep, it's our only source of security. Never empty your savings to buy a condo, or you'll end up like us. At the end of 2019, we used most of our savings for a down payment on this 110 square meter condo. The more excited we were then, the more painful it is now. When we bought it, house prices were at their peak, and we just wanted a stable place to live. Unexpectedly, about 3 months after signing the contract, we encountered the mask mandate. This area is near the border, and the situation is complicated. We had no income for over 3 years, the condo wasn't delivered on time, and house prices dropped. The blogger said they had been renting before, and their biggest worry was whether the condo they bought would be unfinished. Finally, in 2024, they received the keys to their new home and moved in. Because of the child, she had to stay home full-time to care for the family, and the entire financial burden falls on her husband. I cried my eyes out after buying the home. My mortgage was $530, over 3,600 yuan. And after 5 years of payments, I still had a $93,000 mortgage left. But my condo value is now down to $81,000. My loan is more expensive than the home itself. Every day I work, I'm just working for the bank. Since buying the condo, I haven't eaten out at all. For breakfast, I just eat an egg, healthy and inexpensive. After buying the condo, I dare not buy anything else for fear of not having enough money to pay the loan one day. Everyone says buying a home is for a better and happier life, but after buying the condo, why don't I feel happy? You might ask, if Jack Ma can see this data, doesn't the CCP government have it? Why can China produce super cheap products but not super cheap houses? Because in the CCP's mindset, ordinary people are like leeks waiting to be harvested, not laborers who should be rewarded for their hard work. On the blueprint of urban planning, industrial land and residential land have been placed on completely different ends of the scale from the very beginning. Take Shenzhen as an example. The city once enforced an industrial red line, locking over 30% of its land for construction to factories and industrial parks. As a result, industrial land prices stagnated for a decade, while declining in some cases. Meanwhile, residential land saw prices skyrocket. The gap widened from several times to a staggering 52 times. This is a unique development strategy of the CCP. Attracting factories with cheap land, creating jobs and exports, CCP officials through expensive residential land reaped massive fiscal revenues, with these funds flowing into the pockets of CCP elite families. Therefore, the world witnessed China's manufacturing industry gaining an unparalleled cost advantage, allowing made-in-China products to be dumped globally. while countless ordinary Chinese families were plunged into the torrent of exorbitant housing prices. Thus, today in China, the world's second-largest economy, with its economic downturn, most ordinary families dare not consume. Their decades of hard-earned savings have been invested in housing. With declining housing prices, their accumulated wealth evaporates. Over the past decade, China's social financing has increased several times over. Where did all that money go? Instead of generating widespread consumer prosperity, it has built mountains of assets. China's financial system has always had a clear flow of funds. Large amounts of capital have been channeled like targeted irrigation, flowing into infrastructure, factory expansion, and real estate development. As a result, corporate and government debt accounts for over 60% of total social financing. Meanwhile, the government has vigorously encouraged housing loans for home purchases. Thus, the flood of money has been largely transformed into factories, bridges, and high-rise buildings, rather than disposable income for ordinary people. This is the lowest price in the world that the CCP is so proud of, which, to some extent, is supported by high housing costs globally. Local governments sell industrial land below cost, and the balance of this account relies on the high returns from residential land auctions. This is like a silent transfer payment. Part of the purchase price paid by homebuyers effectively subsidizes the cost of industrial land, thereby lowering the ex-factory price of goods. Real estate has become a huge reservoir of funds, absorbing a large amount of wealth from Chinese households. This meticulously designed model by the CCP enabled China to build the world's most complete industrial system in just a few decades. However, its fatal flaw is that it's a Ponzi scheme, requiring perpetually inflating housing prices. If housing prices collapse, the economy of this communist country will crumble. Now, this avalanche is unfolding. In 2024, incredibly cheap houses were primarily found in the Rust Belt states. By 2026, this extreme price phenomenon is spreading to other economically developed regions.
全款3.4万，淮南买
I bought a unit in Huainan for $5,000 or 34,000 RMB in full. I've been in Huainan for over 3 months now, and today I strolled around the Republic of China-era town with a friend. Some might wonder why I didn't stay in Zhejiang province but chose to buy a house and live in Anhui province. In 2019, I experienced the darkest time of my life. Back then, I longed for a small place of my own to hold all my weariness and confusion. This lady bought a condo in Huainan City, Anhui province. The area has all the necessary amenities, including supermarkets, shopping malls, and hospitals. She also discovered that many villages and towns in Huainan have bus stops, making daily travel very convenient. Although she only recently moved here, she has already fallen in love with the city. A search of major real estate platforms in China reveals a similar trend emerging in some third and fourth tier cities in the Yangtze River Delta region. In some old urban areas, remote towns, and older residential communities in Jiangsu, Anhui, and Zhejiang provinces, second-hand housing prices continue to decline, and properties with total prices as low as tens of thousands of yuan are appearing on the market. If you're buying a home in Huaibei now, unless it's for your own use and you absolutely have to, don't touch it no matter how cheap it is. If you buy now, you'll most likely regret it later. Given the current market situation, 80% of houses on the market will only become cheaper year by year. This is especially true for those in less liquid neighborhoods, where there's basically no room for price increases in the future. For a total price of $14,000, I bought a home in the city center of a new first-tier city. The apartment has a square layout, good ventilation, and a large balcony. It works out to less than $370 per square meter. My comments and private messages are flooded with questions. How did you find a house for $14,000? Today, I'll share my real home buying experience. A 1980s-era residential compound with an unbeatable location and an attractive price. Many of these older buildings don't have internet access, you have to walk around, and many old communities are like mazes, some without even a gate. For a woman, safety is paramount, so I prioritize communities with many elderly residents, few tenants, and small courtyards. These places have familiar neighbors, less trouble, and are quieter. The blogger said that before finding her current apartment, she had looked at another cheaper one, which even had a community canteen, making it very appealing. Unexpectedly, one night she went to see the apartment. She found the entire community completely dark, without even streetlights. She was so frightened that she turned and ran, ultimately having to give up on the apartment. Of course, some of these cheap apartments have many problems. This community's property management is really abnormal. I thought swiping the elevator card to go upstairs was already troublesome enough. But guess what? You have to swipe the elevator card to go downstairs too. Just downstairs. Some self-media personalities advise their followers not to buy cheap resettlement housing, which refers to houses provided by developers to residents as compensation when land is acquired, because the residents there generally have low moral standards. He said he had just shown a resettlement condo to a client and had a more direct understanding of the community's living environment and the residents' quality.
There was
a little incident just now, and I'll explain it in more detail below. After I got off the elevator, the hallway was completely cluttered with things: flower pots, sauerkraut jars, barrels of liquor. The blogger said the hallway was piled high with stuff, almost completely filling it, making it difficult for people to walk. He stated that he couldn't bear living with such neighbors every day. That's all for today. If you enjoy our content, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe, leave a comment, or share it with a friend. We appreciate your support, and we'll see you next time.